You can't get into this vehicle and have all this stuff without being a New York State police officer. He still says, can I see your ID? And he makes me identify myself. Please catch what I'm saying. He makes me identify myself before I'm able to enter onto this military base.
Let's go, let's grow.
What's going on? I'm Carlos V. Spencer. Welcome to another edition, another week. Thank you for those who are tuning in and watching on YouTube or another platform. And those of you who've been listening in, we appreciate you listening in as well. We are doing this so that you become better, and we believe that you're becoming better. I believe in the next 5 years, you're going to be in the place that you're in based on the information that you listen to and the books that you read, conferences you attend. So once you better yourself in the next 5 years, you're going to end up in that space based upon the things you've been doing to get yourself into that space. Today, we want to deal with the thoughts, the things that you're thinking, the information that you're allowing to come in to your mind. You have to be very mindful of those thoughts. I believe it was Earl Nightingale who said most people's problem is that they're following the follower.
The problem with most people is that they're playing the world's most unrewarding game. And the name of the game is follow the follower. Person just going along with what he thought to be correct without checking his references. So I want to suggest that from now on out, at least we do that we check our references and ask ourselves, are the people I'm following going where I want to go?
They're following the follower, and they're following somebody who's not actually thinking about where they're going. He also said that if you were to go down the street of any neighborhood and you to ask somebody what they were thinking, most people would be speechless.
He needs some milk.
The reason why they'd be speechless is because a lot of people just aren't taking the time out to actually think. Like, think about the thoughts that you're having, and also think about the information that's coming into your mind, and also think about the thoughts that have been passed on to you. Why do you think the way that you think? I truly believe that people are in the space that they're in because of the way that they're thinking, or because of the thoughts that they have, or because of the way that they surrounded themselves, or the environment that they just happen to be in, and the thoughts that other people are thinking. You have a lot of thoughts that come to you. You have a lot of thoughts that enter your mind, and every thought that enters your mind is not a good thought. Every thought that comes to you, doesn't mean that you have to accept that thought. Watch this. You don't have to believe every thought that comes to you. So there are some things that come into your mind. There are some thoughts that come into you about yourself. There are a lot of negative thoughts that we have about ourselves. Unfortunately, we have a lot of thoughts that we're not good enough. Some of us have thoughts that we can accomplish the thing that we're trying to accomplish. Some of us have some negative thoughts about our image, some negative thoughts about our mind, some negative thoughts about the things that we're doing in our lives. Every thought that comes to you is not true. Just because that thought showed up at your doorstep doesn't mean that you have to listen to that thought, and it doesn't mean that you have to obey that thought. Pay attention to your thoughts, and also give yourself different information, so when you feed yourself, you have different thoughts. There's a passage that says, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So there are some thoughts that you can meditate on. There's some thoughts that you can read about. There's some information that you can find out about who you are. You can read the scripture, you can read the Bible and find out who you are and what you're made of. You can read different books of inspiration. You can read different success books. You can read different books about money, different books about whatever your profession is, to feed yourself different thoughts, so that now you begin to have these different thoughts, and now you begin to act on the new thought that you've given yourself. I've also heard it said that when things are coming to you or information is coming to you, the best way to get rid of it is not just to try to withstand it and say, I'm not going to do this. What do you mean, Carlos? What I mean is the best way to get over something, or the best way to change a thought, is to replace that thought, to give yourself some other information that you can pull from, so that when this negative thought comes to you, you can say to yourself, that thought is not me, I am this thought. You ever take a multiple choice exam? you ever took a multiple choice exam, that means it's usually A, B, C, or D. You have a question and you have different choices to choose from. The problem with a lot of people is we don't give ourselves information. This is good right here. We don't give ourselves information to give us a different option to actually choose from. So sometimes we're thinking the same thoughts and we come to the same solution because we only have the same options to choose from because we've never given ourselves or our mind another way or a different way or an additional way to think. So your mind can say, okay, that's one thought, but here are some other options and some other thoughts that we can actually think, so we don't have to just stand on this thought. If you don't give yourself information, it's like taking a multiple choice test and you only have A as an option. So if A is your only option, you're gonna just choose A because it's the only option that you can choose from. You have to monitor your thoughts and you have to guard your thoughts. And at the same time, you have to make the thoughts identify themselves. I work for the New York State Police. So what do I mean when I say you need to make a thought identify itself? Why are you here? What's your purpose? What are you trying to carry out? Just because a thought comes up don't mean you gotta let that thought come in. I worked for the New York State Police. I was a New York State Trooper. And when I was a New York State Trooper, I worked the road. I worked the interstate. I also worked burglaries. I also worked domestics. I also worked robberies. I worked a lot of different things. Almost anything you can think of in the police force. I was a police officer. And in the New York State Police, you work in areas that are rural. They're very rural, so there's not a lot of people living in those areas. So a lot of times you don't have a major police force. So the New York State Police and a lot of other state police as well would work in areas where there aren't other police, and we were the police for that area. So when I worked in the New York State Police, I worked in upstate New York, the real upstate New York. A lot of people think Western New York is upstate New York. All right, let's not go down that rabbit trail. When I was upstate New York, I worked very close to a military base. And so there were different times that we would get calls, and we would get calls to have to go on to a military base, and we have to respond to a call that was on the military base. So I'm driving to the military base, and I got this call one day. I have to go on there, and I'm driving my New York State Police vehicle. I'm driving this vehicle that says New York State Police on the side of the vehicle. We wash our vehicles almost daily, or on a regular basis at least, so the vehicle looks good, looks clean. So I'm in the New York State Police vehicle. I have my New York State Police uniform on. I have a shotgun in the middle of my vehicle. I have my on-duty carry handgun on my hip. I have my Stetson, which is my hat the New York State police officers wear. So I have all that. I have my shield in my pocket, which is, like your badge. I'm dressed up and I'm going to the New York State Police call, and I get to the gate. And when I get to the gate, the person who's working on this military base says, "Can I see your ID? You need to identify yourself." Now the whole time, I didn't say this, but I'm thinking, I'm in a New York State police car. I have a New York State uniform on, police officer uniform on. I have 2 guns in my car. I have my hat, I got my shield, I got all this stuff. Everything on me is screaming New York State Police. You can't get into this vehicle and have all this stuff without being a New York State police officer. He still says, "Can I see your ID?" And he makes me identify myself. Please catch what I'm saying. He makes me identify myself before I'm able to enter onto this military base. He gets my ID, he runs it. After he runs my ID, he gives it back to me. I go on to the military base. I handle whatever call I'm supposed to handle. I leave, I work the rest of my day in whatever my patrol area was. Probably some weeks later, I get another call, same military base. And when I get another call to the same military base, it's for a different call, same vehicle. New York State Police on the side, uniform, my rifle, like my handgun, all the same stuff on. I get up to the military base, and the person who's working at the gate says, "Can I see your ID?" Oh, man, please catch this. Just because I came to the military base before with the same uniform on before, driving the same vehicle, and they ran my identification before, just because I had all that and did all that, it did not tell them that I was okay to enter into the base until I identified myself again. And once they ran my identification, they then allowed me to come onto the base. When you have a thought that comes to you, make this thought identify itself. This thought, just because it showed up before, just because it showed up at a different stage or a different age or a different time in your life, it doesn't mean, or through a different person, it doesn't mean that this thought gets to just run randomly into your life until it identifies itself, until you say, where did this thought come from and how is this thought going to serve me? And when you do that, if the thought is not going to serve you, or it's not coming from a good place, then do not allow that thought to come into your life. See, the problem with most people is when thoughts show up, if it's not a quote unquote negative thought, then many times we allow the thought to come in. Many of us can recognize a negative thought. And although some of us are fighting with those thoughts, we'll recognize those thoughts immediately and wrestle with them and try to keep those thoughts at bay. But it's the other thoughts that don't show up and appear to be negative at face value. Those are the thoughts that sometimes we allow to come in, and these thoughts don't serve us. No, learn from this exercise, learn from this example. Even though this thought may have come before and it looks like everything that's supposed to be, you still have to identify yourself. I still need to know where this thought is coming from and what's the purpose of this thought. And when I find that out and make you identify yourself, it's then and only then will I allow you to come into my life. Because as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So the thoughts that come into me must be thoughts that are good. And there are some thoughts that are going to show up at some times. But just like the example I gave earlier with a multiple choice test, when you have multiple answers, you have different options to choose from. So do your best to read information, watch things like this, go to conferences, watch information, learn different things, get mentors, sit and glean from them, ask them questions so that you can fill yourself with different information, so you'll have different things to choose from. And when you have different things to choose from, you'll choose better options eventually, and then you will have better outcomes in your life. I'm Carlos V. Spencer. So glad you chose to tune in with us on today, and I'm glad you chose to listen in with us as well. Like, share, subscribe, send this out to somebody, and join us again, because we'll be here again next week. Let's go, let's grow, let's get it.